And then, Rachel, could you just tell me a little bit about your personal story?
Yes, I will try and tell you a little bit. Because it could go on for a long time. I think you probably appreciate people who have been diagnosed with an eating disorder. They've gone through ups and downs, various iterations, but the nutshell is, I would say it started off as restricting, and I'd been on a diet before. Some of them more extreme than others in terms of how much like it had impacted my life, and like calorie counting and, you know, not eating enough, over exercising. But I would always snap out of it, or it would always be like, I'm going on a diet for this event. And then after that event, I would stop the diet for a while, or like go out with my friends. For me, it more came to a head when I was finishing my undergraduate degree. I didn't know what I wanted to do as a career, because you can't really be a psychologist after you've done an undergraduate degree. And they make it seem really hard to be like a clinical psychologist. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. In hindsight, I realized I got a lot of my self-worth from being good at studying and getting praised for that. And also I did a sports club a lot, so I was like keeping fit from that. I feel it's like little comments from my dad of like, oh, when you stop exercising so much, you're going to have to watch what you eat. And it's all these little things that have built up, you know, just diet culture, or watching films when you're younger, the fat person's getting bullied, you know, that sort of thing. I just thought, right, I need to look a certain way. And I think I sort of wanted to go in health promotion. So I was like, oh, I need to look really fit. And then it was social media was gaining more traction. So I was following people in Australia who always posted workouts in their like tiny bikinis and with their tan. And I was like, I want that, even though I'm in England. Or like, do you know, watching people on YouTube eating loads of tropical fruits for their dinner?
Yeah.
I do not have loads of tropical fruits in England, but I was like, I want to do that. So I think it was like my situational factors, but also the things that I was seeing. And then I think the algorithm is worse nowadays, just personal experience and ads and stuff that I've been seeing. But I think, you know, you get targeted by that stuff. So you think, oh, this is normal. Everyone's doing this. This is healthy. And then you start to think, oh, the people that are telling me maybe this isn't okay, maybe they're the problem. It's not me. And my fruit thing. And then I ended up living abroad. So I didn't even have my family who, you know, were saying, oh, maybe you're exercising quite a lot, maybe you're doing this. And so I got quite isolated from that. And then I think that impacted my mood because I was isolated, and I turned to the behaviors more. So at that point, I would say that I had an eating disorder at that point, because my whole life revolved around food and exercise, and it was stopping me from, like, I would say I would go out and try the local food, but I would be so stressed about it. You know, just stuff that I'd enjoyed before that I couldn't do now, or I'm, you know, yeah, anyway, I won't go all into the whys and wherefores, but I would say that was, but I was very in denial about it. And then I came home from working abroad after 8 months because I was just really unhappy and homesick, and like I say, the eating disorder stuff. My parents could see that I was really unhappy. I felt depressed. Whether is it a separate diagnosis of depression, I think it was because of the situational factors and what I was eating as well. You know, because you can't make as many neurotransmitters and, you know, stuff if you're not eating very well. So then I think I did try and get support from the NHS. And I was also worried that I had no periods and my hair was falling out and all these other symptoms. But because my BMI wasn't low enough, so basically I was like the borderline of healthy weight, and I was like, I'm really clever. If I just stay here, like, no one's going to make me do anything that I don't want to do. I was not okay. I really was not okay. Like, if I could, like, the gym was shut one day and I just couldn't handle it, or I would, like, my mum would ask me to do a simple task and I would just start crying because I couldn't deal with it, because my emotions were all over the place. Like, I was always hungry. Like, I couldn't just eat a meal with my family at home or out, or I'd be thinking about it for like days and days and days. So to me, like, that was not okay for me. Like, it did not feel okay.
Yeah, no, I get
living like that. But I think it took seeing 3 doctors who were like doing blood tests and stuff for one to be like, do you think you might have an eating disorder? Because I wasn't going to sit there and be like, I have an eating disorder, because you don't want someone to make you eat more. So it's really tricky. I can see it from both sides, why people don't get support, because maybe you're not upfront about it, but equally maybe the doctors aren't looking for it or not asking questions. So then they couldn't really offer me anything apart from CBT for anxiety. But then I didn't really want that. Or I know for myself as well, it's just like a new thing. I don't respect someone just because they're a doctor or just because they have that position. Like, for me, actually, so then I did get, my parents were like, we'll pay for a private therapist for you, which I was very lucky, you know, that could happen. So yeah, I did find someone who lived near me and I went to see her, but really I just wanted to complain about my dad because when I finished working abroad, I was 24, but because I didn't really have a job to come back to, I just, you know, moved back with my parents again. Like, I'm very lucky that I had that support, but I was working with him in the end and living with him, and they could just, like, they were really worried that I would end up in hospital and I just could not see it. So that's kind of how it started. And then I saw this therapist, and actually since I trained, you know, to work with clients, sometimes I'm like, oh, she was doing that to me. Like, she was questioning those thoughts, and like, but I just remember sitting there being like, I'm so scared to gain weight, but I don't even really know what I'm scared of. It's just so terrifying that I can't even. But like I said, it was all these other situational things as well, not just food. So then I saw her. I'm not really sure how long I saw her for because I didn't really keep it in a diary, or it was quite a while ago. It was like over 10 years ago now. I would say maybe from like the October to like the February maybe. And she did help me with life direction. Like, I applied to do a PhD, was about eating. And also, yeah, she just kind of shook up the food rules a bit, that I was like, actually, maybe I will start trying these things a bit more. But then I started binge eating. You could have discussion, do you want to call it extreme hunger or primal hunger, or like, different people call it different things for different reasons, don't they? But like, I would just wake up in the middle of the night, like literally wake up at like 2 a.m. and just go and eat everything in the kitchen that I wouldn't let myself eat in the day. And I think it's really interesting because she was like, well, she being my therapist, could you do some yoga when you wake up? And it's like, no, I'm so compelled. By the way, tell me if anything is too much detail that you don't, it's affecting you. Yeah, I just couldn't stop myself. So then I hated myself even more because I already hated myself and my body and felt like failure and all of this stuff. That then I'm like, this is terrible. So then I started making myself throw up because I thought, oh, I'll get rid of it. No, I don't know if I didn't realize or I didn't want to know, actually, this is harmful for you as well, but it felt like the lesser evil because I was reading all these articles like, milk is horrendous because of all these reasons, like never have it ever. And I was like, but I like yogurt, but the only way I let myself have it is if I binge on it. I binge on my mum's yogurt that I know she wants, and then I have to go to the shop at like 6 a.m. when it opens to get her a new yogurt. Like, not even joking. And then I would eat them in the car and have to go in the shop again and get it. And like, I didn't want my life to be like that, but also like, you don't know how to make it any different because you think a new diet is the answer. So I kind of stuck in all of this, and then I stopped seeing the therapist because I split up with my boyfriend because of all of this that was going on, and he had his own stuff. And she told me to go and see him, and I went, like, drove from the session to his house, and he shut the door in my face, and I was like, she gives terrible advice, I'm never going back. Which, as a therapist, I would be like, talk to the therapist. But she probably didn't even say that. That's just what I thought she said, my recollection. But anyway, but actually having a break with my boyfriend was quite good because I think he was accidentally reinforcing things. You know, he would be stressed if we went to eat out, which would make me more stressed. I think my parents, it was the same. So then I started eating more, and I was in total denial. I thought I'm recovered because I could eat more foods. I was still eating very healthily. So maybe it started out as orthorexia and then went more towards restrictive eating.
Yeah.
And as well, like when I did training with National Centre for Eating Disorders, we watched this documentary about anorexia. I just like had to leave the room and cry because I was like, that's so describes my experience, but people are saying like, well, it's not anorexia because we've put this little special box around it that you have anorexia if you have these. Oh, but your body weight's not this, or, you know, is it, you know, when is it severe enough? But my obviously lived experience was like, this is impacting my whole life. So then I was in total denial. I started a health food blog. But every recipe was like, this granola is sugar-free, this granola is gluten-free, you know, it couldn't just be, look, here's a nice granola that you could have for your breakfast. It had to be like something.
The special words.
So then I think but I was still making myself throw up at least like once a week. I wasn't binging to the same extent, like it was happening every day. And then when I started eating more, obviously my body was more nourished, so I didn't have that extreme hunger, but then I think it turned to more emotional.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna, yeah.
But I was in denial because it wasn't as bad and it wasn't affecting my life as much. And then it's only then so I had 1 year of my PhD living with housemates. And it kind of happened like that. Like I would steal their food and stuff because I wouldn't let myself have that food. But maybe you wouldn't say this is a full-blown eating disorder, but maybe you would, depending on how many times you need to make yourself throw up to be diagnosed with bulimia. Like, you know.
Yeah.
But then I ended up living on my own again in my second year, and then it got really bad for me, which I think is tricky to tell the story because you don't want to compare yourself. But like, I would only make myself throw up in the evening to begin with, and then it got earlier in the day. Over the course of a few months, really, like when I was just so stressed about my PhD, and like not being good enough in that then I was like, right, this has just taken over everything. I can't function basically, like physically and mentally. Like I need help. I went to a charity and they were like, oh, you're too severe, we can't help you, you've got to go to the NHS. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, I'll go to the NHS. And then luckily, so I think that was 2016. So I think at that time the waiting lists weren't as long. Like I still had to wait a couple of months, but it was a couple of months, not like years. I did see a doctor first for like blood tests and stuff, but I'm that person who's like, oh, your bloods are fine, even though you're making yourself throw up, you know, multiple times a day actually.
Yeah, medically.
That is then, oh, this is fine, it will be okay, even though there's loads of negative consequences. And then I did see a therapist, but you know, they make you get weighed, which I didn't really want to get weighed, but that's like a non-negotiable, but it was at that time for this one. And they did really help me actually. Like from one session, they did help me get an insight to like, why is this going on now? And then I was meant to see a dietitian and she didn't turn up. And then I was really offended because I wanted her to give me this perfect diet plan. Yeah. But like, if I zoom out now, I'm like, there are so many reasons that she maybe wasn't there that day. Maybe her kid was sick.
Yeah. You never know.
You know, like I can understand, but being the client, I was like, oh, you don't care about me. I'm not important. And they were also mentioning about having medication as well, which like wasn't the first route that I wanted to go down. I felt maybe they were promoting that a bit too strongly. So I didn't go back to that, but actually because I already did psychology and behavior change and habits, I could actually use that on myself now. But I think if I didn't have that appointment, I would still be like, oh, I'm just going to do another juice cleanse. So it was like, oh, it's so not murky, but like, when would you call it an eating disorder, or when would you say someone get help for this?
To be fair, that was, I wasn't sure whether to jump in or not, because there was a few things that you said actually where the BMI personally I can relate to. There was a time where I remember distinctly saying, well, no, I'm fine, I can still lose another stone, and I'm in my BMI, so it's fine. With the BMI and the healthy bloods and stuff like that, would you say that you would like to see, whether it be NHS or what, I guess, diagnosed differently? Because again, we've seen that people with active eating disorders can almost like slip through the net of being healthy, because this is medically, your bloods aren't fine. So would you like to see something like that? Or something different, some sort of different form of treatment?
I think it's really tricky, isn't it? Because they're like, right, we have this amount of resources, we're going to prioritise based on physical health. But you don't want to know when someone's physical health is going to change, or like, especially if you're making yourself throw up. Like, actually, that could just turn. Yeah. You know, and you could have a heart problem, and then.
And you also mentioned with the if you don't want to speak about that's absolutely fine. But with the bulimia, how it did become almost like a control thing. And one thing that I'm almost like learning is that people with eating disorders are probably the most can-do people. They will find ways around everything and stuff like that. But then it became an emotional thing. And would you say that there was also that with your binging, like with your binging as well, where it became emotional, like it did with the eating with the bulimia, and it came as a bit of a support for you? Or was it just because you were restricting yourself so much that when you were waking up at 2, your mind and your body thinks, this is all I want to do?
Yeah, so I think when it started, I think it was in response to the restriction, and that's something has shifted psychologically with the therapy for me to be like, right, let me just try these things that I wasn't, I was scared of before. I think it was a lot about the food rules, because a lot of the stuff that I was eating was stuff that I wouldn't let myself eat during the day. I don't think it was emotional, like I'm stressed so I'm going to eat. But I think there maybe was a piece around, like, it sounds really strange, but it was like winter, and I was in the kitchen with the door shut, with the curtains shut, and it felt kind of safe and like this little bubble like a kind of safe place for me to do this. So maybe there was that emotional piece around that, but I wasn't waking up specifically because I needed.
It wasn't
I think probably that did play into it.
Yeah.